Hello learners, so we've successfully reached the 11th week of this course, and in this week we will be primarily looking at some other strategies of reconciling environmental concerns in international investment law. So in the earlier week we looked at applicable law, principle of systemic interpretation, plea of necessity. Plea of necessity can be taken as a measure of last resort as well. So here in this week primarily we are going to focus on standard of review in ISTS and how that can help in reconciling environmental interest in international investment law. So primarily this lecture number 48th lecture is aimed at looking at standard of review in case of in ISTS where an environmental regulatory measure has been challenged by the investor. So the subsequent videos we will be looking at specific standards like doctrine of margin of appreciation, doctrine of proportionality, principle of good faith and all of those, but I wanted to give a general introduction in this particular video about how standard of review can play a significant role when it comes to reconciling environmental interest along with investors' interest. So why is this significant? I mean, I just said that this is a very significant one, but why is this significant? If we look at scholars like Burke, White and Staden, they argue that most often arbitral tribunals employ such standards of review which has its origin in private law, especially in the context of investment arbitration. Now, there is nothing wrong in applying the standard of review, but the question is whether such a standard of review which has private law origins in investment arbitration, is it suitable for resolving those investment disputes where an environmental regulatory measure is challenged? Especially so because these environmental regulatory measures are enacted by the host state pursuant to sovereign space of the country. Right. I mean, in investment arbitration, maybe such private law origin standard of review can be applied, especially when the dispute is only in terms of monetary terms. But when we're talking about something, a measure that was taken in public interest in the context of non-monetary terms, non-economic terms, then we have to seriously think about employing such standard of review. So that is the point that I want to drive in this particular video. So what is wrong in applying standard of review that is applied in private law, which has private law origins? Now, here if we look at investment disputes where the investor is challenging an environmental measure enacted by the host state, then in that case, we could see that some of the tribunals are deciding what are the measures that can be taken pursuant to regulatory power. Basically, the tribunals have gone into the question of what our state's basic regulatory powers are. Right. Sometimes the tribunal are going to the question of deciding the extent of such regulatory powers. Sometimes the tribunals are deciding on the regulatory choices that are available to the host state. I mean, this is something that we've already seen in the context of the cases that we've discussed in the course itself. I mean, even beyond the cases that we've discussed, the arbitral tribunals have gone into that extent, but we can clearly see that such sort of questions were examined by the arbitral tribunals even in those cases that we've discussed. Right. So, in that context, it becomes very significant for us to look at what is the standard of review that an arbitral tribunal had applied. Why do arbitral tribunal actually go into examining these questions? Because we see that investors most often raises a contention saying that the measure is not a legitimate measure taken for the protection of environment, but rather the measure was taken as a disguised restriction. I mean, in the garb of being an environmental measure, it was actually taken in order to affect their investment or their interest. That is the argument sometimes an investor raises. I mean, for example, take S.T. Meyer's case. We've discussed S.T. Meyer case in detail, right? So what did we see? What did the claimant argue in this case? The claimant stated that the measure was actually not taken for, because of the harmful effects that PCB had on the environment, but rather it was taken in order to protect the domestic PCB remediation businesses. This was a contention that investor had taken. So therefore, in order to look at whether the measure is a legitimate environmental measure or is it a disguised restriction taken to have an adverse effect on foreign investment or on foreign investor. So that is where the tribunal goes into the extent of talking about what states' regulatory powers are, what are the available regulatory choices and all of that. So what we see here is, most often, sometimes when the tribunal itself talks about talking about reviewing a regulatory measure, they express a caution saying that the tribunal cannot in hindsight look at the facts and decide what is an appropriate regulatory measure, but rather the tribunal should assess the circumstances that were available and the scientific evidence that was available to the host state at the time of enacting the measure. So basically, the tribunals, we can see many tribunals have clarified that they will look at the information that was available and how the host state had taken certain measures at a particular point of time when it had enacted the measure and what were the prevailing circumstances at that point of time. This also we do see tribunals clarifying, tribunal sort of gives a clarification before reviewing the regulatory measure. So that is also there. So one way a tribunal could examine a regulatory measure to see if it is a disguised restriction or if it is a legitimate environmental measure is, it could apply reasonableness standard test, and while applying reasonable standard test, it could probably rely on scientific evidence as well, right? What is the point of applying this test? Maybe the tribunal could look at whether the environmental risk that the environmental regulatory measure is going to address, is that risk real and substantial? That probably could be looked at by the tribunal. And this is also significant because if you look at Metalclad case, we've again discussed Metalclad case in detail. I hope you remember the facts of the case from our earlier videos. So in Metalclad case, what we have seen was, there was an environmental risk that was cited with regard to indigenous cactus that was endemic to that particular region of Mexico. But what we see is the Metalclad tribunal did not examine if that environmental risk was real and substantial. So that's where, how can then the tribunal look at the fact of whether environmental regulatory measure is a legitimate measure or if it is a disguised restriction. And if we also look at evaluating scientific evidence as a part of reasonable standard test, so then the tribunals may rely on scientific evidence to some extent. But here also we see many scholars are actually questioning, they're questioning the fact with regard to whether a tribunal is well suited to look at scientific evidence, right? And especially Wagner sort of questions the fact it is the government that should take a call on competing scientific evidence. There may be different scientific evidence, and that is a call of the government to rely on whatever scientific evidence it feels appropriate and take the regulatory measure. And it is definitely not the job of an outside body like that of an arbitral tribunal to look at the scientific evidence and then to take a decision with regard to whether the risk was enough for the government to take the measure, or did the government base its measure on the correct scientific evidence. Why should a arbitral tribunal sort of go into that question? Wagner correctly states that government is responsible to its citizens, right? But an arbitral tribunal, a body that is not accountable to the country's population, but now are in a position to decide which scientific evidence is better, or whether the government had placed enough reliance on a particular scientific measure. So that's, I do agree with certain points raised by Wagner as well. And even this is something that was reflected in the words of Apotex Tribunal as well. Apotex case was in the context of public health. I mean, there was a regulatory measure involved that was taken in the context of protecting public health with regard to import of certain medicines from Canada into the USA. Right. So, in that context, if we see now Apotex Tribunal stated that many tribunals, NAFTA tribunals as well as other international tribunals, have frequently referred to the point that international tribunals should recognize the special roles and responsibilities of regulatory bodies. I mean, that is the job of the regulatory bodies, right? To look at competing evidence, scientific evidence, and then base their measure on regulatory measure on those scientific evidence. Even we can see that Dooch has stated that it is actually not the job of arbitral tribunal, or it is indispensable for arbitral tribunal to decide whether the regulatory measure was scientifically sound or not by looking at a fraction of the scientific evidence that is placed before the tribunal. I mean, there may exist a vast literature of scientific evidence beyond that is adduced before the arbitral tribunal, right? So, it is actually the governmental body that may be in a better position in order to correctly evaluate the wealth of literature that is before the governmental body and then take a decision, a regulatory measure. But it is often questioned whether or to what extent can an arbitral tribunal look at scientific evidence and sort of take a call on whether the host state has in fact taken a very sound, legitimate regulatory measure or not, especially in the context of protection of environment. So, we can also see in many cases in Metalclad, in ST Myers, in Chemutra, there are many cases wherein this particular point with regard to the standard of review has also been raised before the tribunal as well. In the Metalclad case, Metalclad tribunal did not examine any scientific evidence. The NAFTA tribunal did not look at the scientific evidence either with regard to the suitability of the geographical site or with regard to how the Metalclad would operate the landfill. So, here what we, or even in the context of the cacti species as well. Here the Metalclad tribunal gave primacy to the fact that there was legitimate expectation on the part of the investor, that is Metalclad, with regard to the fact that it will be in a position to operate the landfill because it had purchased permits from Cotrin. It had also obtained additional permits, additional federal permits. It had earlier federal permits through Cotrin as well. So, therefore, the tribunal looked at the legitimate expectation on the part of Metalclad and the fact that construction activities were completed and public convenio was publicly announced, then the municipality refused to give construction permit. So, when the Metalclad tribunal gave lot of emphasis to legitimate expectation, there are some scholars like Dooch who have been questioning why didn't the tribunal look at the fact that Metalclad at the time of purchasing Cotrin along with its permits were also aware of the fact, if it had done due diligence, that there were some confrontations with regard to the landfill with the local population. So, Metalclad should have expected, if it had done ordinary due diligence, that the confrontation was there. So, the significance that the tribunal attached to legitimate expectation is sometimes questioned in the context of the pre-existing confrontation with the local population. But still we see that scientific evidence with regard to the environmental risk was not looked at in Metalclad case. But in ST Myers, the tribunal itself stated that it will make determinations in the light of high difference that it will give, that an international law accords to the right of domestic authorities to regulate matters in its own territories. So, that's something we can see the ST Myers tribunal have explicitly stated that, right. And at the same time, we could also see that ST Myers tribunal stated that it will also give due significance to the findings that these regulatory bodies arrive at. So that also was clarified by ST Mayos tribunal, but actually the question or the matter before an arbitral tribunal investment dispute is to what extent the deference should be given, and that is when whether how to evaluate or how to balance the deference that has to be given to the host state with that of the investment provisions that are mentioned in a bilateral investment treaty. One case that is an example for this particular how to strike a balance is Chemutra case, because in Chemutra case the Chemutra tribunal explicitly stated that it will look at the question of whether the fact that high measure of deference had to be given to a specialized body, right? So here the regulatory bodies were considered to be specialized body in their domains, and if deference had to be given to scientific determinations as well as public policy determination made by these specialized bodies, then to what extent this deference can be incorporated or looked at while examining a fair and equitable treatment provision. So Chemutra was filed against Canada under NAFTA. So NAFTA's FET provision is given under Article 1105. So the question that Chemutra tribunal looked at was, while examining Article 1105, if the tribunal should look at it from the perspective margin of appreciation, then whether that sort of puts a dent in the protection afforded to investment and investor. If yes, to what extent that margin of appreciation should be integrated or should be considered while examining the FET provision. So now here we can see that the Chemutra tribunal answered this question in the affirmative and stated that margin of appreciation has to be given, right? And then while talking about giving margin of appreciation, to what extent it would give, so it stated that the fact that the regulatory bodies had taken a science-based decision, that will be considered while examining the factual circumstances under the FET provision. So this is what Chemutra tribunal had answered. So we've seen that margin of appreciation has to be given and all of that. So here interesting aspect of Chemutra case is that the claimant Chemutra himself, Chemutra itself had argued that tribunal cannot second guess a science-based decision taken by a highly specialized regulatory body. So I think to some extent even the investors, when it comes to the question of scientific evidence, are on the same page, right, to sort of have a standard of review that gives deference to the decision of the regulatory bodies, especially when the regulatory bodies are taking the decision based on scientific evidence. So that we can see. So one thing that we can safely conclude because of the discussion in this particular video is that there has to be the standard of review has to be carefully looked at when the investment in an investment arbitration, where the arbitral tribunal is confronted with the question of reviewing an environmental regulatory measure, because it is not just like other investment dispute, and it does not only involve monetary consideration but also includes a question of the sovereign right of a country to enact environmental regulatory measure. So therefore comparative public law standard of reviews, right, so doctrine of proportionality, which we can see to be applied in other jurisdictions, so that could be especially in the context of ECHR. So that may be relevant while deciding an environmental regulatory measure. So to that extent, I think we can safely conclude that. But actually the significance of having such a standard of review in an investment arbitration which involves a public interest measure can be seen from Burke, White and Staten's literature, where they have argued that if we apply the standard of review from private law origin, then that may not be suitable but rather if we apply the standard of review with the comparative law origin, then that may lead to a more coherent jurisprudential foundations. So as we have already established that ISTS is marked by incoherency. On the same facts of the case, we have different decisions given by different tribunals. On same instrument, bilateral investment treaty, the same provision has been interpreted in multiple ways. So it is very essential that an arbitral tribunal, while reviewing the environmental regulatory measure, they very carefully adopt the standard of review. But if we look at the arbitral awards, an arbitral tribunal explicitly does not state what is the standard of review it is going to apply. In some arbitral awards, you can find certain sentences by the tribunal from which you can get to know what is the standard of review it is adopting. But even in other cases, you can sometimes infer through the way that the arbitral tribunal had arrived at the decision, then you may think, okay, so it had applied a margin of appreciation or it had applied the proportionality test. But most often what we see here is that's not something that's very evidently available to us from the arbitral award itself. For instance, take the cases that we discussed in the 6th, 7th and 8th week of the course where an environmental regulatory measure was involved. Just look at the arbitral awards of these cases and then try and find out what is the standard of review that the tribunal in these cases have adopted. As you can see on the screen, that the standard of review is also different. Sometimes you can see some arbitral tribunals have given deference to the host state. Sometimes you can see that the arbitral tribunal have applied margin of appreciation. Sometimes you can see that arbitral tribunals have decided the cases on the facts of the cases. Why did I write on the facts of the case? Because they found the arbitral tribunals found a violation of the BIT provision only based on the facts of the case without applying or without explicitly stating that it is going to give deference to the decision of the regulatory body and all of that. So that is again, we could see in those cases when environmental measure was challenged, still the tribunal had went ahead and decided the cases only based on the facts of this particular case. Therefore, it is this standard adopting this relevant standard of review is an essential tool for integrating environmental concerns in international investment law. So, tribunal has to be mindful of what is the approach or what is the standard of review that it is going to adopt for reviewing an environmental regulatory measure in an investment dispute. So with that, we can conclude this lecture, and in the next lecture and in the next video, we'll be looking at one particular standard of review, doctrine of margin of appreciation, and we will see how, if a tribunal adopts margin of appreciation doctrine, how it can essentially integrate environmental interest or environmental concerns while reviewing an investment dispute or while hearing an investment dispute. So that's something we will discuss in the next video. Thank you.